Everyone have a little virtual wave. Great to be back. How are you all? Thank you very much for coming back, and it'd be great to maybe put in the chat, what have you done since last week? What have you tried? Have you tried standing? Have you tried saying no to some diary invites? Vicky and Ian have already said what they've tried, but today is about onboarding and recruiting, perhaps maybe the most difficult thing that you have to do remotely. How do you find the right people? And then how do you bring them in? How do you welcome them? How do you help them understand the culture? So Ian's going to talk to us about that a little bit later, but it might be worth saying, put in the chat anything you've done since last week, small or large. It could be the tiniest thing. It could be something radical. You've had a bank holiday weekend to think about it, so maybe you haven't jumped straight in, but we hope that today, this afternoon's on leadership, so today you'll get even more things. But start thinking about what are the questions you want answered today? Now, we can put them in the chat if you like, but there we go. Diana's put that in. What are the questions you want answered today? So there are lots of things possibly, again, about recruiting, maybe about onboarding, or is it actually all the same sort of process? One other thing, by the way, is the tables are on groups of 6. If you haven't got a table yet, maybe don't take the 6th place. What's quite fun is that then leave a spot that we can jump into. And also it means that somebody who's arriving means there'll be a table just not on their own, because that can happen if we're not careful. So if it's not too late, maybe join a table with 2 or 3. So that we can jump in, Ian and I, and then a new arrival will have somewhere to go as well. So what is it you want answered today? Maybe even think about it. Later on, you can tell us what you've tried, what's worked, what hasn't worked. Ian's got about 700 slides to talk to us through. Some of them are rather exciting, though. So he's got lots of things to say. So Ian, do you want to come and say hello? Because we want to present you some ideas, some thoughts to get the debate going. It's amazing how fruitful it's been, where we said to people, what have you done? And people, oh, that's a good idea. Oh, that doesn't cost much or anything. So Ian, how are you feeling today about recruitment and onboarding? What are the murmurings you've heard from your clients?
Oh, right. Well, as you said in your introduction there, this is potentially quite a more specialist area, because not everybody has responsibility for, recruiting people, but certainly I think they're likely to have an impact when they bring them on board. So what I wanted to sort of share this morning were some good and possibly some bad examples about what to do when you're looking to bring new people into the organization as well. And I think bearing in mind that we're good listeners, or trying to be good listeners as well, Neil, I think we're going to give people a little bit more time around the round tables this time, because the feedback was you really enjoyed talking to each other about what's happening. Okay,
so Ian, tell us your thoughts.
Tell us my thoughts, right?
I'm going to have a bit of a lie down.
And he's gone. There he goes. Yeah, that's fine. There we go then. Right. So we'll start the presentation so everybody can see that. Okay. So I'm going to share some insights with you and a few sort of tidbits to sort of take away. At the end of this session, I'd like you to be in a position that you've got some good questions to take away back into your organization, to ask your colleagues or to ask yourself about recruitment and onboarding. I'm going to do my best, Chris Whitty, and next slide, please. Because the position we find ourselves in, it's a bit surreal. I don't know about you, but I keep thinking, right, okay, well, vaccines are coming through, right, we'll soon be back to normal. It was certainly normal on a bank holiday Monday where it absolutely poured down. So perhaps we are going to sort of go back to how things were, in which case, what do we need to do to change? Do we need to change around this? Or actually, do we want to grab with both hands the opportunity that COVID has given us to change the organizations for the better? And I think there are some things which aren't going to go back to how they were. Recruitment, I think, is potentially one of those areas, particularly if you are a large recruiter, that you're going to do things differently. So next slide, please. Because the issues that I think we now face, and particularly within the social housing sector, but other sectors as well, is we've started using the 21st century tools that are actually out there. They've been out there for a long time. It's not like Microsoft Teams and Zoom and Chime and all the other video platforms just appeared during COVID. They've been there for years. It's just we didn't use them, or we didn't use them in this sort of work sense. And how many of you in your organizations would dream now saying, actually, we're going to ban all video, excuse me, video meetings? We're not. And it's going to be the same around recruitment in terms of what are the 21st century tools that are out there that we can start to use, and the same with onboarding. Next slide, please. Because what I want you to take away, and this is a huge opportunity, as my friend Lars talks about this, which is actually you've now got the opportunity to stop making the irrelevant more efficient, because you've realized during COVID, there's some things, I don't know why I was doing that, or actually somebody started off a process or a system 5 or 6 years ago, they've long since left the organization, and yet we're still doing it. So this is a really good opportunity to sort of think about, well, actually, what is of real value to the business? Next slide, please. So I thought I'd start off with a story and just share with you, one or two of you may have heard me talk about this before, but back in February, we went across to Seattle virtually, took about 15 CEOs across there and met with one of Amazon's strategic directors, because I want the answer to the question, well, how was Amazon managed during COVID? And notwithstanding the massive increase in the share price and things like that, I wanted to understand from a people perspective, what have they done differently? And as you would expect, actually, it was more, we're being reminded of what they have always done, and they didn't actually change a massive amount. Because at the end of the day, they didn't have a clue that COVID was going to hit, or a global pandemic was going to hit, better than you or I did. But their whole business model has been built on this focus on resilience. So the people that they employ and the way they get people embedded across their organizations is all built on this. Actually, if things go wrong, how can we very quickly get back up and running? So this flexibility in the recruitment is absolutely vital. And I think I may have, I don't know if I mentioned this last time, but one of the things I really like what they do, particularly when they're sharing with new people who are starting the organization, is they have what's called their cascade failures down. So how many times in your organization do you get an email or a Slack post or whatever channels that you actually use saying, right, these are our failures over the last month, and these are the lessons that we've actually learned. Now, they do this religiously in terms of trying to embed these failures. So actually they share it with people and say, oh, actually, yeah, I might have come across that. I'm not going to do that. And they practice what they call chaos engineering, which is a fascinating subject, but obviously for another time. But in terms of hires and in terms of job titles and roles, I'd love it if you could come up with a better one than this, which was a job role for a master of disaster. That could have been a summary of my career to date, but the purpose of this person's role was to actually break the organization from within. And they now have a commercial service whereby they'll employ failure injection into your business. So they'll come in and try and break it. And again, the belief around this is if we've got people and we've tested this, they know what to do when things really do hit us in the real world. But the big thing that made the difference, the big issue that allowed them to continue going forward and making decisions rapidly in the interest of their customers, was the autonomous teams that they've got. And you've probably heard me talk about this before, or certainly come across the Amazon, the Jeff Bezos 2 pizza model. If your team is bigger than it takes 2 pizzas to feed, you will just not be as effective or as efficient. And that's what these guys have got here, 6 to 8 people in a team, and they had no long chains of hierarchy to be able to make decisions around that. And I think that's something of interest, or should be of interest, to housing organizations. Next slide, please. Because our perspectives have changed. You and I may have thought prior to COVID we needed shops to go shopping, and as my friend Anthony Slumbers talks about it here, no, we didn't. That was a completely different purpose why we go out to shops. It's much more a social issue, and the world has not collapsed because we've not been able to take deliveries from some of the supermarkets. And you look at the roles I was reading about, excuse me, how Tesco's have taken on, I think 10,000 new jobs have been created as a result of this demand. And I don't think it's something that we're going to give up easily in terms of going back to that as well. Next slide, please. Because from a people perspective, you've got to sort of think about when we're actually starting to recruit, how do we get to the right people to fit into what the world is now going to look like? So this is setting the context for it. So you're all probably well at the point where you've looked at your return to work plans, your remobilization plans. You hear a lot of talk, oh, we're going to have hybrid workforces. We're going to have teams who come in on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and we might have a team who comes in on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, who, yes, that would be the WTF team. So we're going to be changing the way that we actually work. And I think this is one of the features when we're looking from a recruitment perspective. We are going to have to be a lot more change absorbent. So, that uncertainty that sort of creates fear and stress in people, that's something that we're going to have to find ways of managing. And again, when you're looking to recruit, we're going to have to find the roles that are actually likely to be most disrupted for that. Because for the next few years, we're going to be investing far more. We're going to flip the coin away from management development, and it's going to be much more about leadership development, which again we will cover in the final module this afternoon. Because we now live in a distributed organization. Whether we like it or not, we are not going to go back to 9 to 5 in the office every day. It's going to be much more nuanced than that, and therefore you're going to have to be asking questions within your organization about the job roles and about the individuals who carry out those roles as well. So learning on the job is going to be really, really tricky, and I'll touch on some of the ways we can start to pick that up. But the key thing for me to sort of share, and this leads on to, into the next slide, please, is don't use the term working from home. You're at home trying to work. There's a big difference there. And from a people perspective, the biggest challenge you're going to have beyond the recruitment stage is how do you manage this always on toxic culture that we've got, because you can't switch off. And quite a few of you shared with us last week the challenges you have as managers and leaders. Actually, it's you guys who are getting, wow, I've got to do my emails at nighttime because I don't have time during the day. This is not sustainable. And the key thing that is for organizational perspective that we're going to have much better handling on, and I don't think we're there with this yet, is understanding personal and team well-being. So the issues around, if I said, how's that rent arrears team doing over there, or the repairs team doing over there, how would you know how well they're doing? Because we don't have those measures in place to we might start to be getting some individual measures in place, but certainly not team ones around there. The visual management is going to be dead, and that's going to have implications for when we're looking at mentoring and coaching and basically that whole buddying up system when you get a new starter coming. Because one of the areas that is going to come to the fore, and this is not something I was familiar with until recently, is around how some of the newer companies that are forming and growing rapidly, how they understand and measure what comes out of your organization's digital exhaust. I'm not expecting to say many of you have sort of heard that phrase before, but as organizations, the realization is now coming that we pump out a lot of content, both professionally, but also personally. And one of the things that recruitment organizations and companies are now looking at and using the digital exhaust is to get automated personality profiles. So based on your social media, they can do the personality profiles before you've even, finish putting your CV in. They can get a good idea and measure you against those jobs and roles that you're going to be advertising. This raises lots of issues around ethics, and this raises issues about whether we should be using those things. But the genie's out of the bottle now. The technology that you've got is able to do this for you. So I don't know how many of you guys are on the Microsoft platform, but now you're probably in a position where you're getting a daily email from Katana, which is their remote virtual assistant, telling you how your conversations have gone on previously. You said this. Do you want to follow up on this? So this is artificial intelligence coming into our world, trying to sort of make us more efficient, but also raising the issue of, oh, I didn't realize I'd said that. I'll be more careful in the future. So workplace analytics is going to have to come to organizations, and we're going to have to start having this discussion with colleagues at an early point. because we need to understand how the work now gets done, and that's going to be a challenge because we don't have the systems yet to be able to help us around that. The other piece that we've got to get people prepared for is this operating at corona speed. I don't think anybody wants to go back to the pace that we used to operate with decision making and how long that used to actually take, particularly when you got out working remotely in a matter of days when the first lockdown hit. So we're going to have to understand how people are able to operate at the speed that's appropriate for them and for the organizational needs. Next slide, please. I think in terms of recruitment, there's a really good article in last week's Sunday Times. You might recognize James Timpson, the cobbler, also has Snappy Snaps. They employ, I can't remember how many thousands, I think it's about 5,000 people across their portfolio of properties. And one of the things that they've now realized, actually, we were doing the wrong thing, was that you recruit only when you've got a vacancy, instead of building up a pool of people who would love to work for that organization, who have already had some pre-assessments done to see, actually, yeah, you would fit with our organizational culture really well. And it's something that James is really pushing now, because that has enabled them to respond very, very quickly. Now, you'll probably have to have quite a big sort of recruitment pool to go for that. But, are you looking at virtual recruitment events whereby you can get people who are interested in social housing, maybe, or interested in your particular organization, who can actually come along and find out what it's like, what the values, the purpose of the business actually is, so that you've actually got people who have indicated, yeah, I'd be interested in working with this. This is my skill sets. Now, that's something I'm not aware of how an organization is doing, but it might be something you want to think about, particularly if speed is a business imperative for you. Next slide, please. One of the other ways, particularly around when you get new people on board and people from different sort of demographics and backgrounds, is how many housing organizations, and you may have heard of this, it's been around a while, create a shadow board of younger employees. The reason for doing this is those organizations are then in a position to sort of share how the decision-making process goes on. It acts as a good challenge and support mechanism to the executive and senior leaders. But what it also does is it starts to develop the next generation of leaders in a way that actually they understand how the business goes. So not only do they provide some challenge and some insight, but you're already getting that succession planning process done at a very, very early stage. So it'll be interesting to have a discussion to see how many housing organizations have these shadow boards. Next slide, please. Because part of the challenge you're going to have, and I had this conversation yesterday with a senior leader, is, when you're trying to sort of introduce some change, say around recruitment, people are just so busy. And the biggest challenge we will have with any change that we're looking to do is if we make change a part-time role. If something is important to you, if the recruitment process is important or the onboarding process is important, don't make it's part of somebody's job. If it's too important, it needs to be a full-time part of their job. Not full-time in terms of that's what they do for the rest of their career. It's actually, we need you for the next 6 months to spend time on the onboarding process. Next slide, please. So what is the impact around sort of recruitment and onboarding going to be around the offices? You've heard the phrase hub, home and roam. That's where we're going to be. And we're going to have to understand how the people that we're recruiting, what is their preferred, preferred work style around this. You might have some people whose job roles out being working remotely, out in the field, for example. You might have people who have to come into the office, or you might have people who, for various different reasons, not all down to work, have to work from home. And this will be, I think, a deciding factor in terms of where people want to work. Now that we've gotten over this whole issue of, I need to commute every day, a couple of hours every day into an office, people are going to trade, particularly younger generations are going to trade quality of life for something that fits their objectives around this. So think about this carefully, because in the world in which we work now, the office space in particular, you're going to have to see this as space as a service, So when people come in, it's almost, offices are going to become almost event spaces, gatherings, bringing people together, sharing large-scale communications, and basically bring everybody together, get that organizational feel. It's going to be a shared collaboration space where you come together on specific projects. It's going to be areas, I think it's a great example that I've seen from some of our members who are, turning their organizations into community hubs. So you've got residents as well as employees mixing together within the office space for their own purposes. I love the idea that we were chatting with one of our members around using some spare office accommodation as a social WeWork. So people in social tenancies who can work from home, but who can't because of their accommodation needs, could come into your area offices or your main offices where they can, as I say, access your IT systems and support systems as well. But think about when you're getting new people coming on board, are you providing them with the transparency around the air quality, air recirculation, and the cleanliness factors within the office? Would you want to go into an office where you weren't certain how well it's been cleaned or how often the air has been changed? Next slide, please. The other big issue, not big issue, but opportunity for organizations is you can recruit from anywhere now. The old adage around, you recruit from your travel to work area has gone. We're going to have to rethink about where we want this talent. Now, it might be that for specific roles, for specific functions, whether it's, a specialism within IT or a specialism within HR, for example, that, actually, I just need to elevate our strategic thinking in this area. We can't afford, somebody full time. Tell you what, we're going to buy in a day a week of this person. You might just buy them in for a particular project. One of the big issues that we have at the moment is how do housing organizations attract and retain data scientists or data analysts? It's a challenge because these people are massively exceed supply. So do you rethink and say, actually, we know we can't attract somebody full time. Why don't we just pull them down as and when we need them, off for specific projects? And as I called it there, the data power by the hour. But onboarding your culture in a remote world actually probably won't change as much as what you think. If like a lot of housing organizations, you have continued to recruit during the last 15 months, what has changed around that? You've probably moved from that face-to-face interview to actually, yeah, I'm quite comfortable talking on screen. We might have to tweak a few things, but actually culturally, I can get most things across, or certainly in an interview perspective. One of the issues around recruitment that you're going to have to start thinking about is what were the job roles and skills that you needed during the last 14 months that you're going to need in the future, which you currently don't have or you can't train for. And I've given you some examples there of the kind of jobs and roles that I think housing providers are going to need. But the big thing you're going to need from a leadership perspective is to understand each employee. What are their personal requirements? What are the business requirements? And what's their preferred way of working? We talked about this in the last set of modules around, people who actually come alive at night and want to actually start sending around loads of emails after 9 o'clock at night. You're going to have to understand that. And as I said, to be an attractive employee, you're going to have to find ways of catering for that. Next slide, please. I shared with you last week a really good way of having conversations, particularly when you get people new in the organization. It has actually changed its name. I did call it Icebreaker Video, but they've been so successful, they've now changed it to Gather Round. And this was a really good way of getting people on board and having those conversations. And I think the area that you're going to have to start to understand and get the balance right is between formal and informal conversations, and how do those take place. And we talked last time about, do you have, you really understand and be careful about how many meetings you hold and why you get people there, and do you need them there for the whole time? But what information do you need to share? You want everybody to hear everything, but in the same way that we probably weren't switched on for every single minute of a physical meeting, we will be exactly the same in a remote world. So how do you make sure that you share the right information at that right point in time? Next slide, please. So I think final slide, in terms of onboarding, some pointers to go away and sort of think about. It's really important to establish your company culture early on. I'm trying to think which hotel group chain it was. It escapes my mind now, but they had a philosophy when they were doing the onboarding, which was, if we didn't do the onboarding about the company culture right at those first few days, and I think it was, you know, you spent the first week understanding the company and the organizational culture, was basically, we got the last company's culture. So this is something you've got to put right at the beginning of getting people on board, and therefore you've got to have your company story ready. What is your company story? You know, have you got one? How is it transmitted? Is it PowerPoint slides? Is it the CEO sharing stories and coming on? Or is there a video you could record that, you know, people can go away and watch before the start, so they understand the history and the organizational, I suppose, values and purpose around that. Get them IT ready before the start. Make sure they've got the phone, the IT kit, all of the connectivity, and they're all set up and ready to go from day one. I've talked previously about the need to understand formal versus informal and getting that balance right. You know, go through your meetings that you've got and just make that assessment. Actually, have I got anything to add? Am I required in this particular meeting? Can I feed into this in another way? But preventing isolation and loneliness is going to be really, really key. And we're going to have to be, as leaders, much more aware of this. And that's where platforms such as Gather Round or whatever you've put in place in your organization are going to be important. And we've got to be brave to have those conversations. Choose your right buddy. We talk about you know, mentoring, coaching, sitting alongside Nelly, you know, we used to have in our organization. I would, in a remote world, I think you've probably got to invest a bit in time, because this is not just about somebody who understands the job correctly. It's actually somebody who lives and sort of espouses the company values as well. Because again, particularly somebody coming on board, you don't want somebody who's, you know, perhaps slightly cynical or is not enjoying life or what they actually do, because that will potentially, you know, contaminate that individual right from the beginning. So think about the buddy you're going to put them with. By all means, share the company swag, tea bags, chocolates, cups, mugs, pens, gonks, you name it. You know, that's always a nice way for something that you're not expecting to arrive, and a nice surprise that's going there. But think about that, how you can do that in an ethical way as well. There's some great companies out there, because again, you know, you are sharing your company brand and your values by those things. Consider virtual tours. You know, I love the idea, and you can get it done professionally, or you can just walk around with a selfie stick and just start to show people, and it can be really informal, insightful, and those people who are in the office can shout up and wave, you know, but show them the places, give them a feel for what this organization is that I'm coming into, because if it's their first ever job, they're going to be really sort of intimidated and nervous. So anything you can do to reduce that fear down, I think, is a good thing. And think what support you're going to give them over the 6 to 12 month period, because I think working in a remote world, you're going to have to give them that little bit longer, because you're not seeing people on such a regular basis coming into the office in that routine. So I think that support for onboarding is going to have to go on a little bit longer than before. So I hope that was useful, colleagues. Happy to take some questions, chat with Neil now, but I'm finished the slides for now, and then we can have a bit chat, and then we can go off to your tables and you can continue the conversation there.
Thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Neil.
That was great stuff. Well done. Round of applause for Ian. He's done a lot of homework, hasn't he? I think we're particularly excited by the digital exhaust, and a bit scared, because went to a tech conference I was speaking at, and this guy said, basically, if you use data and robotics, you'll get better applicants, because we're not very good at interviewing people. We tend to get people like ourselves. So can we make it more efficient, or are we all feeling a bit uneasy about the fact before I enter the room physically or virtually, you know all about me and my profile isn't right, or something, or maybe I clicked on the wrong thing 3 years ago and that means I could never get the job. I think this is a fascinating area, because what you were talking about there, Ian, was not just onboarding. It's what I've been thinking about for leadership this afternoon as well. But I'll share two stories. Somebody I worked with in the public sector last year started their job, and a whole week went by before anybody contacted them at all. And so they left. And on the other hand, I was coaching somebody last week, and this was a leader trying to deal with somebody who's been brought into their group from another section, so not entirely aware of all the things that perhaps happens in their area. And so after 3.5 months, they're still saying, I'm not ready to have a go on my own. They're still not confident, even though they've said, well, we'll be with you. And I wonder if that's a thing as well, is when you're in the office, you've got somebody looking over your shoulder, or you got somebody over there you can just go and ask, is how do we get people confident to have a go once you've done all the stuff? And Steve has said there's videos from the chief executive. I love the idea of the selfie stick tour. So Ian, we're just thinking about what to ask people to discuss in the group, the smaller groups. One thing is kind of what have you done? What's worked well? What's worked not so well? And be honest, has your organization done anything at all to change? Or is it just, let's do the normal thing, but we'll do it via video conference? Ian, have you anything to add to that? Do you think we've got a searing question?
Yeah, I mean, the feedback we got last week, Neil, was people really enjoyed the opportunity to just ask other people. And a bit like Steve there sharing that example, I think that's really good for people to break out into the tables now and what's worked, what hasn't worked, because we need to really learn from you if something you've tried hasn't worked as well. So feel free to sort of share that, but focus on the two issues around recruitment and onboarding. What good things are you proud of that you would like to sort of share with colleagues? But yeah, I think if we can break out into the tables now, Neil, and probably leave them till about past, so they've got a little bit more time, and then you and I will just dip in and out and hopefully get some people to come up on stage afterwards.
Yeah, please volunteer to come on stage. So whatever you need to do, rearrange your hair or your background, because you don't want to see us speaking anymore, really. We've done it. So we'd love to hear from you. So be prepared. We'll dip in and you can share your thoughts, or perhaps the thoughts from your table, as we invite you on stage after 11:30. So see you in a bit.
Hello, colleagues, and welcome back. I hope you found the roundtable discussion fruitful there. There's certainly some interesting points in the tables that we sat in around, recruitment and what's changed, and more importantly, what hasn't changed. I like the contribution from Sarah, which for the second interview stage is, you go for a coffee and a walk, just to get to know that personality a little bit better as well, and also the getting residents involved in the question in terms of sharing the culture, what the end user customer was interested in, was also good as well. But how are the discussions on your table, Neil?
Well, two things. People like the cascade of failure, but then we're a bit scared how they'd introduce it into their own organization. In a small organization, it's tricky unless it's modeled by the senior leadership. You might have to reframe it as lessons learned. But a great contribution, Andy Withy said that their school leave apprentice, instead of, we're talking about onboarding, she was helping people to think differently about the medium, the channel, because she knew all sorts of things where they got a bit stuck in their ways. So the new person was bringing new ideas that have been really effective in helping their communication. So that's, of course, the flip side of onboarding, is what does the person bring that's positive and disruptive, but in a positive way. So we need a couple more volunteers, but it feels at this point we could perhaps have some insight from one of the world's leading motivational gurus. So Diana, by the way, we've got Diana, Nikki, and Shannon, and other people working very hard to make this happen. But we're going to play a video now from L. Vaughan Spencer, the man and the myth. Here he is. Hello, I'm L. Vaughan Spencer, global business expert. I was responsible for the transformational change program at Debenhams, which was highly successful in the 3 weeks before they closed all the stores. But Are you asking yourself, what about remote recruiting? What about online onboarding? Are you astute in the way you recruit? Is your attention to detail minute? Please don't forget to unmute. Do you onboard with a sword? Can you afford to make your induction a production on a Norwegian fjord or an award-winning concert on the harpsichord? Does this all sound rather untoward? So how do you conduct a job interview remotely? It's important to ask questions. Get some good questions. Get the conversation going. I'll show you how. Listen to these great questions. So, tell me about yourself. If you weren't doing what you are doing, what would you be doing if you were doing the do? What's been your biggest challenge so far, and how did you avoid it? Who is your favorite member of One Direction? What's that goat in the background? Imagine you had to choose between betraying your best friend or stealing David Attenborough's lunch. What would you do? Do you know the way to San Jose? That's how to do it. Ask questions. So, can I have the job, please?
A big thumbs up there from for Colin for Elvo there as well. Okay then, right. I think we want to sort of have a chat with some of the people on the table. So Amanda Bennett kindly agreed to come back up onto stage again and share a little few insights into their pulse surveys that they've been doing, but particularly sharing about some of the agile contracts that they're now introducing. Hi again. Hi, Amanda.
Hi, Ian. Hi, Neil. If I'd known I were going to be on camera more, I would have dressed appropriately. I thought you were going to be freezing today, hence the hoodie.
Yeah.
I'm not a bank robber in disguise, I promise. Yeah, on our group, we got talking. Obviously, we started off about onboarding, and then we went on to going forward. And I just shared that we've done some pulse surveys across the last 12 months, and surprisingly, a lot initially loved the home working. The satisfaction during the winter months, which were expected, and the majority did actually like it, but would like to have a hybrid situation where obviously you can go in, have face-to-face meetings, one-to-ones, but predominantly be at home when you're needing to get on with some work. So we used that opportunity, and I sent out, we're having our new HQ refurbed as an agile office with concentration, collaboration spaces, and then training rooms, etc. So before it's opened back up in June, I issued an offer. I called it an opportunity for all the staff based there. An opportunity to work agile from now on. And there's 180 staff based in the HQ, and asked them if they wanted to change their contracts, and particularly the place of work clause, where it previously said obviously our HQ, to now say HQ, other officers that we have are working from home or wherever that it's deemed appropriate, coffee shops, etc. So the gamble paid off, I'm pleased to say. So I've still got a job. And of the 180, all but 12 have come back and said they have accepted their variation to contract for the place of work. So, which is great, because me and the team can now concentrate on those 12. I'm not just going to leave them in the lurch. I understand that there will be some mobility issues. There'll be circumstances at home where they can't work ideally from home, or there may be mental health issues, etc. But the thing is now, I've got the resource to be able to concentrate on those 12 people. And in a way, I can I know the others are okay. So when we go back in June and we have this big reveal for the office, which I'm going to also have a virtual video done now, stealing Ian's idea, then, you know, I know that there's everybody's okay, and I will have sorted these 12 out as well. The other areas of the company are asking, are we going to have the offer made to us? And because it were a gamble, you know, I were edging my bet, so to speak. And I've said, yes, once we've got the head office sorted, we will offer it elsewhere. So just to share if anybody, you know, is thinking about doing that sort of thing. Okay, Ian?
Yeah.
Thank you, Amanda. I wonder if Catherine Proctor would like to come up. Let's see if your hand's there. If it doesn't come up, I'll just speak some of the stuff that was discussed in my group. Somebody was saying, you know, are we really bringing our culture? And I was saying, well, actually, did we bring it before COVID? Maybe this is a new way because we got micro channels to help people become part of the gang. Catherine, hello. I hope you don't hate me for asking you up, but you looked after direct services, trade. So they're kind of, they do see each other more face to face. You said there is a skills shortage. You said that your head office is in the center of Leeds, and you're re-examining that. So anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, I think well, it's all a new area. I was saying to the group, I've come back after 12 months on maternity leave to a whole new world, really, I guess. So in terms of inducting team members, that's something I'm looking at. But I think what's carried on in my team is probably a lot of the old ways of working, but it's the back, kind of the engine room, I call it, and the management team who have probably had to adapt to the home working ways more, and then there's a disconnect between those teams and then the frontline teams that we just need to have come back, and I can see there's a disjoint and we need to kind of bring that together a bit more. So there's some really good ideas. There's also what came out was obviously having a really different view of induction and onboarding, but also kind of there was a lot of discussion about culture. And, you know, some people felt that there wasn't a real clear culture in their organisations that could be really taken on board by people who were coming into the business. There was another organisation that they've got a real clear sense of their culture, their one team culture, and that was existed before kind of the COVID times struck and people working from home. So that just seems to kind of come across when people are joining anyway, because it's so entrenched in the people who are already in the business. For my own workplace, there's been a real move. We got a new chief exec a few years ago who has kind of been driving a steam train through our old culture and kind of agile ways of working. COVID's enabled us to kind of move quicker on getting rid of our head office and looking at new spaces that are more collaborative and not about 9 to 5, and people can work at any time. We've got new contracts as well, and you know, just trying to think how we can do that, not just about people who were office based, but also for my team being more flexible and then being flexible for the customer. So there's a real, and selling that as well as a point to, you know, to others to attract people to the business. And I think you made the point that people can work from wherever in the world. In our organisation now, we've got somebody who's in Brazil and somebody who's up in I think in the Highlands of Scotland, somebody in Bristol. So that would have never have happened. So yeah, and I think that then it you know, the more we kind of promote that, the more people will be attracted into our business, hopefully.
Well, we were talking about skills shortage and word of mouth. What does word of mouth mean in digital days? And I'm intrigued. Yeah. How did you get the person from Brazil?
I have no idea.
But was it Facebook, LinkedIn? Was it something else?
I think it's a skills shortage issue. I think ICT, you know, we've I think I'm not speaking out of turn, as a sector, we've probably not paid as well as you know, kind of other areas of the private sector, and in order to compete, you need to kind of think about, well, yeah, you can up your salaries, but we've we can't compete with some businesses. So what else can we offer? And this flexibility is, and how we work is probably one of the sells, really, one of the wins. I think the word of mouth thing I was saying is about, there's still, word of mouth can still happen via digital methods and via the old-fashioned telephone as well. And that was more about there is a skills shortages with particularly electrical and gas kind of engineers and just tradespeople in general, I guess. But again, the salary issue, we can only offer so much and probably can't compete with some big developers with short-term work that they offer and big salaries, but we can offer a whole range of other things that that can't be offered by other businesses. And the word of mouth thing is just about people spreading that, talking about their workplace, talking about the differences, and also just, I suppose, just lost my train of thought there. Lost it. It's gone. It's gone.
That's all right, Catherine.
That was great. Thank you, Catherine. Lots of ground covered there. Thank you. It's nearly time for us to go. So thank you, Catherine. Thank you to Amanda who came up. Thanks to everyone putting things in the chat. We're going to talk about leadership at 2 o'clock today. So Ian, thank you for laying out a wonderful menu of ideas and insights there. Anything you want to say before we all go and have a cup of tea or something?
No, just really looking forward to the leadership chat this afternoon. I think we've teed it up really nicely, Neil, and I can't wait for the next pearls of wisdom from Elvo about leadership.
All right, thank you. See you at 2 o'clock or just before, everyone. See you later.
Bye.